Sometimes cranking the difficulty up to hard mode or higher makes a game more interesting. So today we wanted to highlight 10 games that get better with higher difficulty modes. Two things to keep in mind. Number one, if you don't play on hard modes, if you can't or you just don't want to, you do you. We think player choice is important. Everyone should play how they want. But we just wanted to highlight some difficulty modes that actually get creative. So number two with that, we tried to avoid some of the obvious ones. Yes, Halo on Legendary, or yes, Call of Duty on Veteran. Great stuff, but talked about to death. So let's get started here with number 10. The Ghost Recon series was perfect for ramping up the difficulty. You know, in the old days, with the original game, it made a very unique game feel way more fresh. The original 2001 game on Elite made an already challenging game even more difficult. You're managing multiple fire teams and enemies that are sometimes hard to spot, and then you can go down really quickly. That extra difficulty just made all those mechanics so much more tense. From the originals up until I think kind of Ghost Recon Future Soldier, all of the games featured higher difficulty options that really just kind of completed the experience. Ghost Recon games at that point were built to be tense, slower, accurate, just a bit more realistic shooters, and ratcheting up the difficulty made you really play it the way it was intended, slow, methodical, thoughtful. You could still headshot enemies no problem, so the game didn't change all the rules, but the stakes were higher. You could die just as easily, if not more easily. So good luck not using cover in this. It's an absolute necessity. Also, shout out to the original Ghost Recon games. We miss them. Next over at number 9, Perfect Dark. Yes, the 90s, Rare developed Nintendo 64 first-person shooter. On the harder difficulties, things are obviously just overall tougher. You're gonna die a lot more, of course, and enemies are a bit smarter, and you could actually adjust a lot of this stuff. There were modifiers, if we remember correctly, which is pretty cool. On top of that, though, there are more objectives during levels, meaning you would see and do a bit more by playing through on the harder modes. Rare's other Nintendo 64 FPS, GoldenEye, also did a little bit of this. It was just the early days of encouraging multiple campaign playthroughs and just general replay value, and it's worth highlighting. Also, it was just a really solid game. I'm really just wondering what the heck they're doing with that new one that they announced, when we're ever actually going to see it. We're probably gonna have to wait a while, so at least we still have the original. Now, next over at number 8, we have Resident Evil 7. The Madhouse difficulty does a little more than just make the game harder. For one, item placement is different. And assuming you're playing Madhouse a few playthroughs after your first one, this might mess up your mental item map that you've made up in your head, There are more antique coins going from 18 to 33, but with more coins comes more things to purchase. Just like with item placement, enemy placement has also been changed. So you'll be in for a few new scares, and enemies are just in general, obviously, more difficult. Ammo is also more scarce, which makes dealing with more powerful enemies a bit more problematic. You have to be so strategic, so accurate, and so on it. Along with that, Jack Baker is also way faster on Madhouse, so when he shows up, you better run for a safe room as quickly as you can. And just get used to him, because he seems to show up a bit more. And just like with classic Resident Evil, you can't save wherever you want, and you'll have to use blank tapes to save. And checkpoints are just way less frequent, so good luck with that stuff. Now, next over at number 7, we wanted to give props. We wanted to mention something a little bit different here. Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Remember when these games were popping off? Man, that was a great time, especially if you had friends. Now, these types of games had plenty of difficulty modes, and it was fun to jump into, but the highest difficulty, Expert, was on another level. I mean, you've probably seen the viral videos of people crushing the game on wild difficulties. Remember Through the Fire and Flames? Yeah. At the highest difficulty, you're basically hitting every actual note of the instrument in the song in real time and strumming the fastest along with it thanks to that. So it can basically become god tier level stuff to the point where you're almost actually learning an instrument. At that point, maybe you just should. It's also worth noting the other game, the kind of spin-off game Rocksmith, takes this to the next level, taking these gameplay concepts and translating it over to actually playing on a real guitar. Taking at least some of these gameplay concepts and translating it over to playing on a real guitar that you plug into your video game. So the hardest challenge on Rocksmith is really the ultimate level. Congrats, you know how to play guitar now. Next over at number 6, the Thief games. Just an incredibly underrated stealth game franchise from the classic PC days. 1998's Thief: The Dark Project had 3 difficulty modes, and the highest one really ramped things up in good stealth gameplay way that really kind of paved the way for the future. You know, more objectives like not killing a soul, not getting hit, leaving absolutely zero trace, actually having a certain amount of loot you had to steal, like there was actually a numbered requirement, and changing and altered and new objectives, which is always nice for replayability. But it was important that these games had these different things for different difficulty modes, because then we got to see more of that in games like Hitman, where you get scored for prioritizing perfect stealth, leaving no trace, maybe never taking a disguise, not killing anyone. That stuff is really important for stealth game completionists, and thanks to games like Thief, we have that today. Next, over at number 5, let's talk Fallout 4. You know, for a game that's all about surviving in the wasteland, I always felt like I was just kind of making my way through pretty easily. Yeah, Fallout has some difficult enemies and some RPG stuff, but it never really felt like a survival experience. And then there was the Fallout 4 survival mode. There are a lot of drastic changes. You know, for one, you have to deal with hunger, thirst, and exhaustion, so you have to actually sleep, drink water, and eat. Along with that, fast travel is disabled. The only way to save is by sleeping in a bed, so no quick save or no autosave either. Stronger enemies spawn more regularly, you're subject to fatigue, and you need antibiotics or a doctor to heal any specific illnesses. Crippled limbs don't auto-heal, and if a companion is knocked unconscious during battle, they won't get up after the fact. You'll have to actually manually heal them. But probably one of the biggest changes is that ammo has weight, which is really annoying, especially if you bounce around between different weapons that use different ammo types. As annoyingly difficult as some of this might sound, it does seem like a truer survival experience that really just kind of fit the world of Fallout very well. It's worth checking out, even if you weren't super hot on Fallout 4. Now next up, yeah baby, let's talk about The Witcher 3 on Deathmarch difficulty. Deathmarch gives enemies approximately 80% more health and 230% more damage. So this actually makes it so being a god at the combat, being able to, be near perfect with your swords and flawless is not good enough. To succeed, you need to have that mastery as well as playing 100% completely perfectly like a Witcher. This is where it gets good. It's not just, make the enemies harder. Deathmarch requires you to have intimate knowledge of Witchering. If you don't know, a Witcher is kind of like a magical Batman where they have tons of tools and knowledge and take to their battles in a prepared state. Witchers embrace alchemy and use potions and decoctions and special items to completely max out and RPG buff the hell out of every move you make, from poisoning yourself to cause more damage to an enemy that draws your blood, to using the right oils on swords. All of it is absolutely 1000% necessary. You can't wing it. And even if you thought you used this stuff to your advantage in the regular modes, you haven't seen anything yet. Managing Geralt's toxicity level here becomes like a whole job in and of itself. You don't want to overdose, right? And on top of that, keeping your equipment from breaking, managing food, dealing with roaming enemies that can one-shot you, it's a difficulty nightmare, sure, but on a surprisingly deeper, more technical level. Next, over at number 3, the XCOM games have a little thing called Iron Man difficulty mode, which is the hardest way to play XCOM, and it really makes the game harder. It takes away the ability to have multiple saves, for example, which makes every move you make permanent, and there's no rolling back to a save to fix something or save someone. What this does is it heightens every choice you make. Every decision truly has to be tactical and strategic on a higher level than anything you've done in previous modes, and it really truly makes you appreciate your teammates. And frankly, that's what XCOM is all about. And then, if you're really nasty, because we've mentioned it in some videos before, it deserves a special mention. Shout out to the modders. The Long War mod just makes things even crazier. If you're looking for a true endurance run in a game like this, look no further. Now down to number 2, let's talk about The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. The Last of Us already, it's not the easiest game, even on normal difficulty. Naughty Dog either way just did a really good job of making the game feel pretty intense. So when you switch to Grounded mode, everything just gets turned up to 11. Grounded mode is both games, and for the most part, has the same changes in difficulty in both of them. Enemies deal more damage and are more aggressive. Ammo, crafting, and upgrade materials aren't as plentiful. The HUD is kept at a bare minimum, or just gone depending on the game, listening mode is disabled, which is a huge crutch that you realize you rely on, and items won't shine in the environment, so you have to be really perceptive. But what this does is, again, not just makes it challenging enemies or less health or anything like that, it actually just turns the game into a true survival horror experience, and it makes it way more stressful than it already was to begin with. And down finally at number 1, Alien Isolation. Nightmare difficulty is something else, man. The alien that stalks you throughout the game is smarter, pretty much relentless here, so you never really get much of a break from it. The other enemies' AI is pretty smart as well, although it seems like the distance you can be spotted is the same. Still, it's the alien you really need to worry about, specifically because you have no map, which absolutely sucks. And in this mode, the iconic alien motion tracker is broken, so it's more of a liability and just causes more problems for you. So the way to really do this mode is to always be on the move and just do it the old-fashioned way. Use your eyes, but more specifically, your ears, and just hope for the best to avoid the big bad. Now, along with that stress, of course, you're also managing way less resources that were fairly abundant on normal modes in comparison, so it also becomes like an old-school survival horror resource management thing, too, which is great. So, yeah, good luck with that one. It's a game that's quite a few years old at this point, but it still holds the hell up. So those are 10 games with some pretty interesting harder difficulty modes that we thought were worth highlighting for specific reasons. If you got a favorite, we'd love to hear yours down in the comments. Everybody loves to be challenged and play in different ways, so hit us up. We'll probably do a part 2 and a part 3 of this video. There's plenty more to talk about, so we want to hear from you. But if you like this video, clicking the like button's all you got to do. It legit helps us out. We're just talking games here. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.